Dawn crept over the plains like a shy guest, brushing pale gold across the brittle grass around Eleanor Whitcomb's homestead. The light always approached her gently, as if aware she carried memories heavier than any water pail. At 60, with silver hair braided down her back and hands shaped by decades of survival, she moved through her morning rituals with quiet determination, as though each task kept her anchored to a world that had taken more than it returned. The cabin sighed when she stepped outside, its boards loyal but tired. Eleanor paused at the porch, letting the early breeze settle against her skin. Mornings belonged to her alone, before voices and glances reminded her of what society believed a widow should be. Grateful, silent, finished with wanting anything that stirred the heart. She carried feed toward the henhouse, her stride steady though her knees protested. The wind lifted strands of her white hair. Young Thomas from the neighboring farm waved from his mule, and she lifted a hand in return. Children saw her without judgment, and she treasured that brief grace. As she scattered feed, she sensed a presence on the far ridge. She did not turn. Riders often paused there, but this gaze felt different. Steady, calm, neither probing nor dismissive. It warmed her chest strangely. She shook off the thought. Imagination was a luxury she rarely allowed. After chores she saddled her old bay mare and rode toward town. The path wound between sage and red earth. In her pocket lay a thin list of supplies. Money was scarce. Pride scarcer. But necessity urged her forward. When she reached the settlement, familiar murmurs rose. Mabel Hart called a greeting from her porch. Eleanor answered politely, well aware friendliness was not the same as closeness. Folks admired her resilience yet kept her at a distance, as if widowhood made her unknowable. She tied her mare near the general store and stepped inside. The dim room held the scent of flour, tobacco, and pine. Behind the counter stood Silas Granger, the ranch foreman she once thought well of. Now he looked at her the way men look at something past its use. "Morning, Eleanor," he said, voice flat. "Stock's low. Prices higher. Might be time you moved in with kin. Hard world for a woman alone." "I manage," she replied evenly. "Age catches everyone," he muttered. His words struck deeper than she wished. Age was the shadow she tried not to face. She gathered her goods, paid with careful coin, and stepped into sunlight with her pride wrapped tight around her. As she mounted her mare, she felt that same watchful presence. Turning toward the ridge, she saw him. A towering Apache man stood against the bright sky, bronze skin glinting under the sun. His long dark hair hung in braids over broad shoulders. Bare-chested, he looked carved from strength yet softened by stillness. He observed her not with hunger or challenge, but with a reverence that unsettled her. Their eyes met. Something quiet and unfamiliar stirred in her chest. He inclined his head, slow and respectful, then turned and disappeared behind the rocks. Eleanor rode home with tangled thoughts. She remembered glimpsing him before, Nantan Loco, helping repair fencing during a peace arrangement. Younger by decades, stronger than any man she had known, yet gentle in a way that felt ancient. She told herself he had no reason to notice her. She was a widow with fading beauty, and a life hardened by dust. Men like him looked toward horizons. Still, the way he watched her lingered like a small flame in a cold room. Back at her cabin, she unloaded supplies and swept the porch, though her mind drifted toward the ridge. She brewed tea, hands steady, heart restless. She stepped outside as the sun lowered, shadows stretching long across the doorway. For the first time in years she felt something shift inside her. Not hope exactly, but a loosening, as if a door long closed had cracked open just enough to let light through. The wind carried the faint scent of smoke and cedar from an Apache camp, and she sensed him again, unseen but present, like a figure waiting at the edge of a story she had never dared imagine. And far beyond the ridge, Nantan paused in his quiet stride, turning toward her cabin as though he felt her heart leaning subtly, hesitantly, toward possibility. Eleanor settled on the porch step, fingers wrapped around her warm cup. The sky deepened into amber, brushing clouds with gentle fire. She watched the light shift across the open land, feeling the day settle around her like a worn quilt. She had grown accustomed to this quiet life, shaped by small survivals and long echoes. Yet tonight those echoes felt different, as though another presence had joined her solitude without making a sound. She reminded herself who she was, a woman who had endured storms of grief, who had buried dreams carefully and learned to expect little. But the memory of Nanton's steady gaze would not fade. It lingered like a question she wasn't prepared to answer. She stood at the fence line, fingertips grazing weathered wood. The horizon blushed with the last color of day. A warm breeze drifted over the plains, carrying whispers she nearly understood. For a moment she wondered what it might feel like to be seen not as old or finished, but as someone whose story still had pages left. The thought startled her. The world did not offer such hopes to widows her age. Yet something inside her whispered otherwise, soft but certain. She closed her eyes, unaware that far beyond the ridge, Nantan paused once more, sensing her quiet shift as surely as she sensed his presence. The evening deepened, carrying the hush of approaching night. Eleanor lingered, unsure why her heart felt awakened, yet unable to deny the stir within. Something in the air promised change, as though destiny had begun to lean her way. The morning after that strange stirring of the heart, Eleanor Whitcomb rose before the sun, as she always did, though something in her chest felt unsteady, as if a new rhythm had begun without her permission. She brushed her silver hair, tied on her faded apron, and stepped outside to discover the wind had scattered half her fence across the yard. The night had been calm. The damage made little sense. Yet there it lay, splintered rails, loosened posts, the sort of work that demanded a younger back. She stood there, breathing through the ache in her knees, calculating how much she could fix before noon. She had only taken 2 steps toward the fallen rails when she sensed movement behind her. Not loud, not threatening, just a shift in the air, a presence gentle as a thought. She turned. Nantan Loco approached from the tree line, tall as the morning shadows, his footsteps silent on the brittle grass. His chest was bare, marked with ochre dust from early work, muscles moving with the controlled ease of a man raised by the land itself. Yet his eyes, dark, steady, unreadable to most, softened when they met hers. He stopped several paces away, giving her the distance a respectful man keeps. "Your fence fell," he said softly, voice deep as canyon stone warmed by sun. "I can see that," Eleanor answered, a little more sharply than intended. It wasn't irritation toward him, just the sting of feeling incapable. Nantan did not step closer. He simply studied the broken line of rails, then looked back at her with a calm patience that unsettled her. "You should let someone help," he murmured. "I manage fine." He nodded as though her words were truth, not pride. Then he knelt by the nearest fallen post, testing the weight of the earth around it. His fingers pressed deep into the soil, seeking anchorage. Eleanor hesitated, unsure whether to allow it. But he wasn't touching her tools, wasn't assuming right over her homestead. He was simply observing, waiting for her to decide. "If you want to look at it you can," she said at last. He lifted the post with one arm, steady, fluid, as though the wood weighed no more than a sack of feathers. She tried not to stare. He slid it back into place and braced it, giving her a question rather than a command. "Here?" She nodded. He pressed it firm. Then he moved to the next rail, waiting for her direction again. Slowly, piece by piece, they rebuilt the fence together, her holding posts in place, him driving them deep with measured strikes of a stone mallet he fashioned on the spot. Not a single word passed that wasn't necessary. Yet the silence felt alive, full of unspoken understanding. When the work was done, he stepped back. His breathing was steady. Not a drop of sweat marked his brow. "Your land stands strong again," he said. "Thank you," she replied, voice quiet. "I didn't expect help. Help comes to those who deserve it." The words rooted in her like seeds dropped into long-neglected soil. As he turned to leave, she found herself asking, "Why did you come?" He paused. His gaze drifted toward the ridge as though searching for the right shape of truth. "I saw the fence fall in the night," he said at last. "The wind did not do it. A bull broke free from Granger's herd. I let it back. I stayed to be certain the damage did not harm you." Eleanor felt her breath catch. Most men would have explained the event, fixed the harm, and taken credit. He had done all 3 without a whisper until she asked. "You watch over the whole town like this?" She asked lightly. "Only you," he answered before he could stop himself. Then he stiffened as if realizing he had said too much. He dipped his head respectfully and walked toward the cottonwoods, leaving her standing with the fence they had built together. The day warmed. Eleanor tried to lose herself in chores, but the memory of his words tangled in her thoughts. Only you. No man had spoken to her with such quiet sincerity in decades. It frightened her, that softness. It reached into places she had sealed away after widowhood. She had barely set down her bucket when Silas Granger appeared on horseback, dust rising behind him. He dismounted with a grunt and walked toward her, boots heavy, voice heavier. "Heard that Apache's been helping you," he drawled. "Folks don't take kindly to that sort of closeness." Eleanor straightened. "There was no closeness, Silas. He fixed what your bull damaged." Silas snorted. "Man like him don't fix nothing for free. You're old enough to know that." The words hit hard, sharper than she'd expected. Old enough. Too old for interest, too old for tenderness, too old to be anything but a burden. She swallowed her sting and turned away, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Silas mounted again, shaking his head as if her life were an inconvenience he'd like to tidy away. When the dust settled, Eleanor leaned against the fence Nantan had rebuilt. For a long moment, she let herself listen to the quiet hum of the plains. She thought of Nantan's steady hands, the care in his movements, the gentle way he had spoken her worth without using the word at all. But doubt snuck in like a draft beneath a door. She was 60. Her body bore the map of a lifetime's burdens. What business did she have receiving such kindness from a man whose youth still clung to him like morning mist? By late afternoon she walked to the well, seeking distraction in the cool shadow of the stone rim. As she filled her bucket, she sensed him again. She didn't turn immediately. She simply felt him, like a warmth that settled just beyond reach. Nantan approached slowly, carrying a jug of fresh water he had filled upstream. He placed it beside her without touching her hands, without stepping too close. "You worked long today," he said softly. "Drink before the heat steals your strength." She took the jug, fingers brushing the rough clay. Her voice wavered with an emotion she couldn't name. "You don't have to keep helping me." "I know," he replied. "And still I do." He turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the well's shadow. His voice lowered, barely above a breath. "People speak as though you are past the age of mattering. They are wrong." Before she could answer, before she could even breathe, he disappeared into the lengthening dusk, leaving a trail of quiet strength behind him. Eleanor stood frozen, holding the water jug to her chest, realizing that for the first time in years, someone had looked at her not as a relic, not as a burden, but as a woman worth protecting. And though she tried to deny it, something in her heart, fragile, trembling, long asleep, began to wake with slow, dangerous hope. The days that followed carried a strange weight, as if the air itself sensed the delicate shift between Eleanor Whitcomb and the quiet Apache, who moved like a shadow made of earth and wind. She tried to busy herself with chores, to outrun the warmth that rose in her whenever she recalled his steady words, but the more she pushed it down, the stronger it bloomed inside her. Still, fear lingered beneath that bloom. Fear of town gossip, fear of loneliness returning, fear of wanting something she had long convinced herself she no longer deserved. One morning, her flower bin ran empty, forcing her into town despite her unease. She saddled her mare and rode along the dusty trail, passing fields shimmering in the early heat. She felt watched, not by danger, but by the thought of Nantan's quiet presence somewhere beyond the ridge, the way he always seemed aware of her movements without intruding on them. That comfort frightened her more than solitude ever had. Town was loud that day. Wagons clattered, horses snorted, and voices tangled like restless wind. Eleanor dismounted by the general store and noticed several men leaning beside the trough, Silas Granger among them. Their gazes slid toward her, low and cutting. She had endured such glances before, but today they seemed sharpened by something unspoken. Inside, she gathered her supplies quickly, but her hands trembled when she reached for the flour sack. Mabel Hart approached, voice lowered to a whisper. "You be careful, Eleanor. Folks been talking." "Talking about what?" Mabel hesitated, cheeks flushing with discomfort. "About that Apache man. About how he's always near your place." About you accepting his help. Some men don't like it. Eleanor swallowed hard. Her pulse throbbed at her throat. I asked for nothing improper, she said softly. People don't need much to make noise, Mabel replied. Noise becomes truth if it's repeated often enough. Outside, those same men paused their conversation as Eleanor stepped onto the porch. Silas's smirk slithered across his face. Well, if it ain't the widow with her new shadow, he drawled. Heard you got yourself help these days. Strong help. Eleanor gripped her reins tighter. My fence was damaged. He only fixed what your bull wrecked. Silas shrugged. Doesn't matter what you meant. Matters what folks see. She felt his words like burrs under her skin. Sharp, clinging, unwelcome. She mounted her mare and rode away before her voice betrayed her. The town shrank behind her as the landscape widened, stretching toward her homestead like a worn painting. Yet she couldn't shake the sting of humiliation. She didn't care what Silas thought, but she cared how his venomous words could reach others. She cared that Nantan, who had shown her only quiet respect, might be blamed for kindness. The shame grew heavier as she neared the cottonwoods. When she saw him standing at the tree line, waiting in calm stillness, her breath caught. Nantan's eyes softened when he saw the tension in her face. You return troubled, he said gently. She dismounted, unable to speak at first. He stepped closer, but still kept a respectful distance. She wished he wouldn't, wished he would cross the space and steady her shaking hands, but fear held her tongue. They spoke of you, she whispered. They twisted things. Said I, said we. Her voice cracked. She felt foolish for trembling, foolish for caring, foolish for being seen as anything but a tired widow trying to survive. Nantan listened, every line of his face carved with a quiet patience. When she finally met his eyes, she saw no anger, no worry, only concern for her. They speak because they do not know you, he said softly. They speak because they fear what they cannot measure. But their words hurt, she admitted. And they will hurt you too. His voice lowered, warm as dusk. Their words are wind. They cannot move me. Eleanor wanted to believe him, but decades of being judged had etched caution deep into her bones. I'm too old for this kind of trouble, she murmured. Too old to be looked at with suspicion. Too old to drag someone else into it. Nantan stepped closer. Not touching her, not crowding her, just near enough that she felt steadied. You are not too old, he said. You are strong. You are seen. Those who fear strength will always speak. Her heart fluttered painfully. She forced herself away, tears burning in her eyes. Please, don't say things like that. I don't know how to hold them. Nantan's expression shifted. Not hurt, but gently wounded on her behalf. Then I will speak differently, he said. But I will not lie. You are a woman of great worth, Eleanor Whitcomb. She shook her head, unable to bear the tenderness of his tone. She stepped back, creating a distance she didn't want but believed she needed. I can't do this, she whispered. I don't know what this means. I'm 60. My life is behind me. You should be with someone who has years ahead. Nantan lowered his gaze, but only for a moment. When he lifted it again, there was quiet fire there, steadfast, unyielding. I choose where my spirit finds peace, he said. And it finds peace near you. The words pierced her like light breaking into a room long sealed. Too bright. Too beautiful. Too dangerous. She turned away, biting her trembling lip. I need time. Space. Please. He nodded once, slowly. Then he stepped back into the shadows of the cottonwoods, leaving her with the sound of her own uneven breathing. For several days, she kept her distance. She worked until her hands ached, cooked meals she barely tasted, slept restlessly. She tried convincing herself that stepping away was wise, but the silence he left behind felt like an unfilled space in her chest. On the fourth day, heavy clouds rolled across the plains. Wind gathered strength, pushing against the cabin walls. A storm was coming, one of those fierce summer tempests that ripped branches from trees and turned dirt into cutting dust. By late afternoon, lightning laced the sky. Eleanor rushed to secure her shutters, when a distant shout reached her through the rising wind. She froze, listening. Another cry, rough, strained, echoed from the cottonwoods. Without thinking, she grabbed her shawl and ran into the storm. The wind lashed her face, dust clawed at her eyes. She pushed through it, heart pounding, calling out into the chaos. A flash of lightning revealed him, Nan-Tan, trapped beneath a fallen branch, one arm pinned, blood streaking down his shoulder. He had clearly been trying to guide a stray horse caught in the storm when the tree split. Eleanor gasped, rushing toward him. Her fear of gossip, judgment, age, evaporated in an instant. Nan-Tan, speak to me, she cried, kneeling beside him. He opened his eyes, pain deep but steady. I am here, he murmured. I did not want the storm to find you alone. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the depth of his wounds. Eleanor pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his labored breath. Hold on, she whispered fiercely. I won't leave you. As the storm roared around them, Eleanor realized with bone-deep clarity that she had been running from the wrong thing all along. Not from danger, but from the terrifying possibility of being loved again. And as she braced herself to drag him toward safety, she knew fate had brought her to this exact moment, whether she was ready for it or not. Eleanor dragged Nan-Tan through the shrieking storm with a strength she hadn't known she still possessed. The wind battered her from every side, lightning split the sky into trembling shards, and dust stung her eyes until tears mixed with the grit. But she did not stop. She could not. His weight slumped heavily against her, breath shallow, warm blood seeping through her sleeve as she braced his arm across her shoulders and pushed through the chaos toward the cabin's dim shape ahead. When she finally burst through her door with him half-collapsed beside her, the storm slammed shut behind them as if exhaling in defeat. She lowered him onto the cot with shaking hands, her heart pounding harder than the thunder outside. He lay still, chest rising unevenly, lashes dark against his copper skin. She fetched water, stitching cloth with trembling fingers. The smell of rain drifted through the cracks, mingling with the scent of blood and wet earth. Hold on, she whispered, pressing a cool cloth to his brow. Just breathe. Stay with me. His eyelids fluttered, and for a moment his gaze found hers through the haze of pain. I am sorry, he murmured. I should not have troubled you. A sharp sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. You think this troubles me? She said softly. Losing you. That would trouble me more than you know. His breath caught, but he closed his eyes again, surrendering to the pain. She cleaned the gash on his arm, binding it tightly with torn strips of an old dress she had kept for sentimental reasons. The fabric once held memories of a younger version of herself, one she believed long gone, but tonight it served a better purpose. Hours passed, though time felt fluid, marked only by the storm's fading growl and the rhythm of his breaths. She stayed beside him, occasionally brushing hair from his forehead, her touch hesitant but tender. She felt the truth of her feelings rising, heavy and impossible to ignore. Near midnight, the storm eased into a quiet drizzle. The cabin glowed with the faint light of a lantern, casting long shadows across the room. Eleanor sat on the stool beside him, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Yet she was awake in ways she hadn't been in years. Nanton's breathing steadied. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her as if she were the first thing he'd ever learned to recognize. You stayed, he whispered. Where else would I be? His gaze softened, brimming with gratitude and something deeper. Something dangerous and gentle all at once. You should not worry for me so, he murmured. She shook her head. Stop saying what I should or shouldn't do. You are important to me. More than I expected. Silence settled between them, rich and warm. The fire crackled softly, filling the spaces words could not reach. For the first time since her husband's passing, she felt the presence of another soul in her home not as intrusion, but as belonging. Nan-Tan shifted slightly, wincing. She reached out instinctively, placing her hand over his. Does it hurt much? Pain is familiar, he murmured. What is unfamiliar is being cared for. Her hand trembled at the confession. She squeezed his fingers gently. You deserve care, Nan-Tan. More than most men I've known. He studied her, expression unreadable but tender. When he spoke, his voice was low, threaded with vulnerability. I was not sure you wished me near after what the town said. I thought perhaps my presence wounded your peace. Her heart pulled tight. It wasn't you who wounded me, she said. It was my own fear. Fear of what people think. Fear of being foolish at my age. Fear of wanting anything at all. His gaze held her with quiet intensity. You fear wanting. I fear not wanting enough. She swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the depth of his honesty. No one had spoken to her like that in decades, perhaps ever. Her voice softened. I don't know what to do with feelings like these. I buried them long ago. Then let them rise slowly, he whispered. As slow as dawn climbing the hills. Her breath hitched. Something fragile and luminous stirred inside her, like a bird testing its wings after too long in a cage. She felt the walls she built, the ones made of age and grief and pride, beginning to crumble at their foundations. She looked at him fully, seeing not just the man before her but the possibility he represented. A life not defined by endings, but by the quiet courage to begin again. You make me feel seen, she admitted. You are seen, he replied. Even when you turn away, even when you bury the truth. My eyes do not tire of you. Tears blurred her vision. She turned her face away, but his fingers brushed her wrist, gentle as a breeze. Do not hide your tears, he murmured. They are not weakness. They are truth. She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. It felt like releasing years of silence, grief, and self-doubt. When she finally met his gaze again, her expression was stripped of pretense. Nantan, what if I'm too old for you to want me? She whispered. What if I'm a season you deserve to leave behind? He held her hand tighter, his voice steady as earth. Age is breath. It passes through a body, but does not mark a soul. Your spirit shines stronger than any I have known. She drew a shaky breath, overwhelmed. I don't know if I can be brave enough for this. You already are, he said. You came for me in the storm. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the moment between them. The moment when fear and longing collided softly in the dim cabin light. Eleanor felt something shift, a breaking and mending at once, as though her heart had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. Just then, a loud knock struck the door, shattering the fragile stillness. She jolted upright as the door swung open without permission. Silas Granger stood there, dripping rain, jaw tight with suspicion and indignation. Well, well, he sneered. Seems the rumors were true after all. Eleanor rose quickly, standing between Silas and the wounded man behind her. Get out, she said, voice trembling with fury she didn't know she possessed. Silas stepped inside anyway, boots muddy, eyes narrowed. I knew that Apache would bring trouble to your doorstep. And here he is, injured, hiding in your cabin like some stray you took in. He moved closer, breath sour with anger. This is exactly what folks feared. That you'd forgotten your place. Eleanor squared her shoulders, silver hair glinting in the lamplight like wire forged in flame. Then let them fear, she whispered. Silas's expression flickered. Uncertainty, surprise, a hint of fear. And behind her, Nantan slowly sat upright, despite the pain, eyes dark with a promise that needed no words. The storm outside had passed, but another was just beginning. Silas Granger stood dripping on Eleanor's cabin floor, his shadow thrown long by the lantern behind her, his presence a dark intrusion on the fragile peace she'd fought to reclaim. Nantan, wounded but unbroken, sat upright on the cot, watching Silas with a calm so steady it made the foreman falter. Eleanor's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She felt the storm still inside her, even though the rain had faded, felt it coil like a warning deep in her bones. Silas took another step inside, boots scraping the wooden floor. You've lost your senses, Eleanor. Bringing him in here. Protecting him. Making a fool of yourself. Eleanor didn't flinch. I took him in because he would have died. Because your herd, your storm, and your cruelty put him in danger. And because he has shown me more decency than you ever have. Silas blinked, stunned that she dared speak back. His jaw tightened with a bitter pride she had once mistaken for strength. He turned his glare on Nantan, voice cracking with resentment. This is your fault. You put ideas in her head. She doesn't need you. Nantan exhaled slowly, as though weighing the air before speaking. I did not put ideas in her head. I saw what was already there. courage, heart, a spirit that does not bow.
Silas bristled. You think you can take her? You think she'd choose you?
The question pierced the room like a thrown blade. Eleanor felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders, but instead of shrinking beneath it, she felt herself rising. She stepped between them again, her voice trembling but sure. I choose who I am, Silas. And I am not yours to belittle. Not now. Not ever. Silas opened his mouth to retort, but the fury in her eyes stopped him. She pointed to the door. Leave. He hesitated, then spat on the floorboards near her feet. You'll regret this. A woman your age should know better than. Get out. The words cracked like a whip. Silas clenched his jaw, turned, and slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. For a long moment the room sat in silence, the only sound the soft rasp of Nanton's breathing, and the steady patter of rain easing outside. Eleanor stood frozen, hands trembling. The confrontation had torn something open inside her, something old, something long denied. She turned slowly toward Nantan. He watched her with quiet pride, eyes warm despite the pain. You defended me, he said softly. Even when you were frightened. She sank onto the stool beside him, hands clasped in her lap. I wasn't frightened of Silas, she admitted. Not really. I was frightened of what it meant, choosing you. Choosing this. Nanton's gaze softened. Choosing what your heart already knows. Her breath quivered. She looked at him. The man who had never pushed, never taken, only offered, only waited. The truth sat heavy on her tongue, fragile as glass. I don't know how to be wanted, she whispered. Not at my age. Not after so many years alone. He reached for her hand, slow and deliberate, giving her every moment to pull away. She didn't. His fingers closed around hers, warm, strong, reverent. Eleanor, he said, voice deep as dusk settling over the plains. I have waited my whole life for someone whose spirit could stand beside mine. I did not wait for youth. I did not wait for beauty. I waited for a heart that carried storms and still rose with the sun. Her eyes stung. Tears threatened. She shook her head weakly. But why me? Why would a man like you, young, strong, with all the world ahead? Because you are the world to me, he murmured before she could finish. Because I have watched you move through grief and solitude with more grace than most people show in comfort. Because the first time I saw you tending your land alone, I thought, here is a woman who deserves to be cherished. She covered her mouth with her free hand, overcome. No one had spoken to her like this. Not even her late husband, kind as he had been. She felt like the earth had shifted beneath her, revealing something luminous where only dry soil had been. He continued, voice barely above a whisper. I did not speak my heart before because I wanted you to choose freely. I wanted you to heal what life had broken. I wanted you to see me without fear. Her hand trembled in his. And now? Now, he said, leaning closer with effort, I speak because the storm showed me how close I came to losing what I had not yet confessed. Eleanor bowed her head, tears streaking her cheeks as his thumb brushed the back of her hand. She felt every barrier she had built, the ones made of age, doubt, pride, begin to crumble. She looked up, meeting his gaze fully. I am afraid, she admitted. Afraid of hurting you. Afraid of wanting you. Afraid of being happy after so long without hope. Nanton's voice was a steady anchor. Then let the fear stay. Let it walk with you, not stop you. Let it remind you that what we choose now is real. She exhaled shakily, heart pounding. She touched his cheek, fingertips grazing warm skin, feeling the shiver of connection ripple between them. He closed his eyes briefly, as though savoring the sacredness of the moment. Nantan, she whispered, I don't want to run anymore. His eyes opened, filled with fierce, radiant tenderness. Then stand with me. As you are. As I am. No more hiding. A long silence followed, filled with the sound of rain softening into a gentle drizzle. Eleanor nodded, not in resignation but in awakening. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his, breath mingling with his in the quiet glow of the lantern. Then I choose you, she murmured. I choose this. Whatever this becomes. His hand rose to cradle hers. And I will walk beside you, as long as breath lives in me. Outside, dawn began to pull pale light over the horizon, revealing a world washed clean by the storm. Inside the cabin, Eleanor helped Nantan stand, guiding him to the doorway so he could see the new morning stretching wide before them. They stood together, two silhouettes framed against the rising sun, not as a widow and a wanderer, not as a woman fearing her age or a man marked by whispers, but as two souls who had stopped running from the truth. And somewhere beyond the ridge, Silas watched from afar, realization settling heavy on him. Whatever bond had formed between them was stronger than rumor, stronger than prejudice, stronger than the storm that had tried to tear them apart. Eleanor took Nantan's hand, lifting her chin toward the light. "At last," she whispered, "I'm not afraid." And dawn answered with gold.